Hi, guys. Welcome back to episode number 3. And I'm glad to be joined, as always, by Kalle Beck. And today, as you'll see, we've got another guest, which is Ollie Thompson. Now, for you that are not familiar, Ollie was the champion of Britain's Strongest Man. And when he won that, he beat guys that you'll be familiar with in recent times, like Terry Hollands, Mark Felix, Darren Sadler. Ollie also competed in World Strongest Man in IFSA World Championships before leaving Strongman to go into MMA, where he competed in the biggest organizations, including UFC. So, Ollie, great to see you, mate, and great to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here with you and Kale. I love talking about strongman. I don't get many opportunities, so I've got a lot to talk about.
Great. Okay, so we'll get into it. Today's subject is going to be records in strongman. They divide fan opinion. There's been a lot of controversial records. So we're trying to figure out if they're good for the sport, if they're bad, and ways to improve them. Now, interestingly, Ollie, you competed at IFSA, and one of the big things that IFSA did, I believe, with Jamie Reeves was standardizing events. I even remembered him talking about not changing the goalpost just before athletes get to an event, such as they did at World's Strongest Man. And I think he used a phrase about you don't have to worry about turning up and facing an egg and spoon race at a strongman competition. So just first of all, Ollie, about IFSA, what are your kind of memories of IFSA versus World's Strongest Man in terms of the differences, the main differences?
Well, as you say, obviously the equipment was all the stainless steel IFSA equipment. It was all being done properly. It was being sold as a real big deal, and obviously we had paid contracts, which in a time where we weren't getting much money, it was a game changer. I think the only person that turned down the paid contract was Pudzianowski at the time. Everyone else took them, and all of the legitimate current rated athletes were all in IFSA, apart from Marius at that time.
Yeah.
The idea of the standardized equipment at the time sounded amazing to me. I thought it was a great idea. I think the idea was also based off the fact that IFSA could also sell their equipment, sell the legitimate equipment, and sell the measurements and stuff like this. The idea was good, but soon after, looking at the product, I realized there was a lot of problems with this product. As far as the events weren't particularly exciting. No one cares about big lumps of metal. People care about motorbikes and cars and fridges and stuff like this. This is what the general public relate to are these things. They were trying to turn it into a like a legitimate sport, if you like. But and I thought that was brilliant because I'm a legitimate sportsman. I want to be a legitimate sportsman. So I love this idea. It was like it really bought into what I see as what I want to be. But when I realized 6 months afterwards, I realized we can't make strongman a legitimate sport. It just doesn't function like that. It functions very differently. So once everyone stopped getting paid, people were happy to get away and get back to the fun events and the fun equipment. We had at World's Strongest Man, at Super Series, at many different competitions.
Yeah. So that brings us directly into the topic of records, because as you've just said, for the sport to be professional, you need that standardization, which obviously then helps with records. But if that's actually not a good thing for the sport, it's not entertaining. Conversely, then we have a problem of making legitimate records when none of the competitions, none of the events are standardized. So how do we square that circle, Care? What do we do with that?
Yeah, I think the IFSA comparison's a good one because the records, like you said, uh, it's kind of trying to do the same thing. It's like the more you emphasize records, the more there needs to be a standardization, and it kind of goes against what strongman is and what we've seen works in strongman. Strongman needs to be a little chaotic. It needs to be what are they doing next, and you can't believe it. If you're just watching this, you come across a YouTube video or some TikTok clip, or for older people, you see something on the television. It has to be something you have no idea how they came up with that. And inside the sport, like you're competing, and I was competing very amateur level at that point with IFSA. When IFSA was around, it looks so cool because it's like we get it, and then you're able to measure it contest to contest. But yeah, it just really work like that. And I think strongman to me is always an ish. Like, when I'm working with clients and they always get worried if like this tire weighs exactly this or that, and I go, if they say it's 550, just think in a general term. If it's 1,000 pounds, it could be 1,100, it could be 800, whatever. I'm sorry, I'm using pounds. I see who I'm talking to, but yeah. So I think you can have records, but they should all be taken with a grain of salt and emphasized in a way is, are they legitimate or not, should be the thing that is then talked about. Which one's better? You got to take it to like an American sport like baseball. We have home run records and stuff like that, but every park, everywhere they play in baseball, it's a different length. Like they play in Colorado where it's a mile above sea level, they hit a bunch more home runs there. So if those stats are more, so in the National League, the pitcher hits. So it's you're not going to score as many runs. There's one less good batter. I know I'm using all of these American analogies, but so there's still records. But then you can say, well, this guy did it, and he always competed in a harder ballpark, was his home one or something. So it could make it more impressive or less impressive towards the fans. But I think you just need to make it some general rule on it, and just do it like that. But you can't be like, everything is just dead set, end all be all.
It seems to me it was never such a big issue when records were happening as just part of a competition where someone happened to break a record. But what's happened pretty much from the point where Eddie Hall specifically went for the 500 kilogram strongman deadlift world record, it became something different when a strongman was training specifically for that. Was that the case for you, Ollie, in your time? There weren't just record attempts like that. It was just if you broke a record, it happened to come during a competition.
Well, when I was in Moscow when Raymond Dogmanis broke the log lift record that had been around for a little while, and it was considered quite a big deal at the time. But obviously, it was a big deal within the athletes because we didn't have the social media presence we have now. So it was a big deal. I thought it was amazing that he broke the world log lift record at the time. I didn't really think about. In actual fact, he was quite a. No, I love Raymond's, but it was quite a. He used. I think he used a sort of half, sort of squat jerk of some type, and he had quite this particular log was a very thin log with very wide handles. I'm not saying Raymond's was great, but possibly even greater with the right log, which is kind of the point we're making, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I take it that record, though, was still just within all the events that he was doing, as opposed to going there specifically for that, yeah?
Yeah, no one set up, even psychologically, no one set up thinking, I want this log record. Well, everyone wants a log record, but no one cared about the log record. The log record was a bonus. It wasn't such a big deal. But I think with television and social media now, and all these strongmen are very well known, we can make a big deal of these records, and it sells well. Record sells well. It's like boxing. There's so many titles because call it a title fight, it sells well. Call it a world record, everyone pays attention to it. So I quite like that. It generates excitement, but it's not really as credible as we'd like it to be.
Yeah, I agree. It seems to me that from people outside of the sport, it generates interest. It was kind of viral moments, Eddie's deadlift and Thor's deadlift, perhaps slightly more so because of the way that was marketed, because I'm not sure Iron Bibby's log press was so kind of viral. But conversely, it definitely creates a big divide between the fans of whether it's legitimate or not. And what do you think, Kale? Do you think that in terms of the fans, they like these records, or you think it does more harm in dividing fans?
Yeah, I think the records are a real, it's a mixed bag. So I think they do really good for promoting the sport in the moment, but long-term, it's not sustainable. We got it to a point, we just had a crazy run doing all these records, for 2-3 years where there could be one broken almost every show, or at least, but that's not how the world works. There's records in sports that have lasted for, longer than our lifetime. And that's what makes them special. If it's broken every other weekend, it's not. And if you promote, there's going to be they went after, it's like going after the quick money versus like a sustainable business. You know, and sometimes you have to do that quick money to get things going, but then you have to figure out how you like wean off of it a little bit. And I think that's where we're at in strongman. And I do, you know, I think it is a real disservice that, you know, and it's just a general issue in strongman promoters where they promote as like whatever they do is the best and anything else is like just trash. You know, it kind of goes down. There's not like a recognition, you know, of course it's business. And this happens, I'm sure Ollie's well aware in MMA is even worse. But you know, making it like, is this one legitimate or this one versus that? I think it's up to the independent people to keep the records, and the federations can all keep their own. But it just makes them look silly at some point, just going off trashing Thor's record, and then they'll promote like a Tom Stoltman Stone record in the same breath when mentioning him when they were all done under the same conditions. So it's like, you know, there's hypocrisy is the only way to put it.
I forget sometimes conversations I've had off camera and on camera, but I know he won't mind me saying, but Big Z said to me, look, there was no such thing as these record attempts in my day. And he said he had no doubt if you had told him he had 4 or 5 months to train for $50,000 to pull 500 kilograms, he would have done it. And I think whether he would have or not, I think that's the point, isn't it? That if records had been going for the last 20 years, they wouldn't be so easily beatable as they are now. So there'd be more legitimacy to it. What do you think on that, Ollie? Do you think someone like Big Z and perhaps some other people from time you were competing, you could see that were capable of setting records if they specifically trained for them? Which guys come to mind for you?
I mean, when you were saying that, I was thinking about Z. He's a good friend of mine, and I always a good relationship with Z. So and I see him the way everyone does. You know, he's a gentleman, a good human, a great sportsman, and a great strongman. But at the same time, at the time, I don't think Z was going to lift 500 kilos at the time. I don't. But I think he's a guy that in the era of 500 kilos, he would lift 500 kilos. Because the thing with the 500 was is the number. It was a beautiful thing, wasn't it? The number, and no one could take that away from Eddie. I want to, you know, I don't know Eddie. I haven't met Eddie, but it's 500 kilos, man. It's like that number. It's a beautiful number, and you can beat the record, but you can't be the one to do 500 kilos. So I think it's special, and I respect that. And I like the 1 kilo, 2 kilos, you can beat the record, but we're not going to see another iconic moment like that again for a while. As far as on that level, I never thought someone would lift 500 kilos. I didn't think it was going to happen. Once I accepted I wasn't going to, I didn't think anyone was going to. That was my only way I was going to see it happen, with me doing it. And it suddenly jumped up, and he beat the record by so much that it made it incredible. And it's almost like we're trying. And he became a big star overnight, didn't he? He became a big name overnight. It's almost like we've seen that blueprint and we're trying to recreate it all the time with all these new records and a new record, but we're not recreating it because it's not as magical as that was. That was magical. Whatever you think of Eddie, that was just a huge moment, and it will stand the test of time even when someone lifts 600 kilos.
Yeah, I think that's the way I see it. It's gone a bit stale now, event after event, just for the deadlift 505 record and nobody getting it. And to be honest, no one getting close to it so far, not really. Talking about then ways to try and fix this if we are going to have record attempts. One thing that I saw, I was witness to, I have seen it with my own eyes, was World's Ultimate Strongman sent out to Giants Live, World's Strongest Man, to Arnold's criteria for records to try and standardize between all of the organizations some basic rules. And there was just a few there on each one. So, for example, log press could be head has to come through, arms have to be locked out, and there has to be at least a couple of seconds where you're totally under control. Just basic things like this. Referee has to have an arm raised and give a down signal. It was simple things like this, which to me would make sense if all of the organizations would just acknowledge some basic rules that they would all agree on. But as it happened, it wasn't signed by all, and therefore it wasn't passed, didn't go through, and it went back to everybody just setting records however they want. So why is it that not all the organizations are agreeing just to that level, minor level of standardization? What's their motive?
They're never going to agree to anything. That's Strongman. Like, you know, they could both propose the same exact thing, email it at the same time, and they're going to decline it to each other, and it's that simple. You know, that's just it's a wild sport how people can't work together like that.
I mean, there was a time when IFSA and World's Strongest Man were working together, right? Before that split, we did have that era where they were working together. Obviously, it went badly wrong.
Yeah, we'll see what happened.
I mean, what do you think about that? At that time, Ollie, when it went from being together to being split, how was that as an athlete? Was the pressure being put on you by both organizations, or was it more just a collective of you guys as athletes chatting about it? Or,
Well, you know what? I was a young, very early 20s, and I'd only been lifting weights for a couple of years. So I guess you could call me in my own head a bit of a hot shot at the time. In my head, no one else's head, just in my head. And I just wanted to make sure I was one of these guys that is one of these paid guys. that was my mentality at the time. Like, Zadrunas is going, Raymond's is going, Vasil's going, and I'm one of these guys going. Who else is going? Which Brits are going? And I was just really happy that I was one of the Brits that was getting this offer, because every Brit wanted it. You know, when I got offered the bronze contract, however it was called,
yeah, gold, silver, bronze.
A lot of people were pissed off at me. And them same people will tell you now, because obviously IFSA's not here and World's Strongest Man is, they'll tell you now that obviously IFSA wasn't great, but at the time they wanted them contracts. Everyone wanted them contracts, other than Pudzianowski. Everyone wanted one. So I was just really happy to be one of the ones getting the opportunity and making a bit of money. I didn't have any money then, so £200 a week or whatever it was sounded amazing.
Mm-hmm. Should there be separate competitions for records? Would that be some sort of solution where they're just done on their own, as opposed to being part of an event where some athletes do it and then some drop out, there's some invited guests there, also seems to get mixed up? Do you think there would be a benefit of just running perhaps once a year an annual Strongman record breakers competition? I would imagine that could get the fan excitement and it separates it off. And that way also you could standardize it more so, because if you do it once a year with the same setup and everybody knows what you've got, is that a reasonable solution, even if just Giants Live did that themselves, for example, each year?
I think it's a great concept. I think it'd be popular. I think one of the things I was going to say was I think that having these money prizes and these records, it's compromised how rounded some athletes are. If that makes sense. Athletes are coming in to a 6-event competition, just wanting to win one event and get an extra 20,000 or whatever it is they're going to get from it. And so we're seeing athletes that are very good at certain events. How many guys that are going to lift 500 kilos or more are going to be really rounded top strongmen? And I might upset some people saying that, but if you understand my question, it compromises their ability to be the best strongman they can be, because they're being lured by some other idea. And it's this world record idea of making X amount from a sponsor. And you know, when Eddie Hall did 500 kilo deadlift, how many other events would he have won? Probably not too many. You know, but he did what he meant to do, and I appreciate that. But at the same time, it's compromising the overall sport and the roundedness of it, because it used to be the strong. You do 6 events or 12 or whatever it is, and the strongest, best strongman might not win the events, but it'll come out on top over the end of it. That was the prize. Now you can win a competition, everyone talk about the guy that won the deadlift.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if is that good or bad. I don't know.
Yeah, the athletes is going to chase the money, and if you can make, you're like real close even if you don't get the record, you win the log lift at, Giants Live Log Championship, you get, 15 or 20 grand. You're more likely to get, more money doing that than podium in the whole show. So if I was doing it, I'd just train log. And you see at other times athletes show up not in shape to do the other events doing that. Like they say they're doing the whole show because they're invited to it, but they'll just do just the deadlift or the log or get injured in the process training for it, because you have, it's more taxing to do that than doing a well-rounded event. And it's like standardizing the sport itself. It's making it into like deadlift man, what was it when we had like the Arnold world, like we had Giants Live, we had the Arnold, we had, WUS, and it was like there's like 50K to deadlift 501 like every 3 months. That's not It was kind of ridiculous. So I think I think they should be marketed as like there's a yearly championship. Zadrunas does that with he has like his own log lift championship. Because if you do that, you're not necessarily going to get a world record every time, but people will push for it. And at least you'll be like, this person, does the 2024 log lift or deadlift world champion, which Giants Live, those supposedly are within the same comps as the full ones, but then it's never emphasized that this is the world champion. In my opinion, this is for a record. And I think you'll get them. Someone will eventually break the world record if you emphasize like this is a championship to see who's the best at this time. It'll eventually happen again.
If it's a championship by a new organization, I can see that it will work. But let's say, for example, Giants Live did the Record Breakers tournament once a year. How is that then overseen? Because if it's not independently overseen, straight away we have the issues again, such as, are the plates calibrated? Who's actually weighed those plates? Who's checked them? Who's the referee? I mean, the big debate about Thor is obviously, which was made by Eddie Hall, was Thor's dad weighed the plates. Well, no, what Thor's dad did was put the plates on the scales in front of Magnus, who's actually Giants and world referee, and he confirmed the weight of them. But I've never understood that argument when at Giants Live, the weights are just rolled out and lifted, and we've got no idea how much they actually weigh whatsoever. So whether the scales were right or wrong in Thor's case, we never even got to see them put on the scales at Giants Live. So I've always felt it was a complete mute argument. But again, how do we fix that? If we were to have a tournament, do we have to bring in independent adjudicators?
Well, as you say, it's in the promoter's interest to have a world record set, isn't it?
Yeah,
which compromises the whole idea as a whole. It's compromised from the start. The problem they have, and Cal said earlier on, is if we keep having new world records, it's going to be watered down and no one's going to care anymore. If someone does 502, 503, 504, I'm not really going to care too much after a while. It's not interesting. I'll wait for 550, So back to the original question, I think that world records in strongman work quite well as far as an organization's own records. They have a name for the event. So whether it be world's strongest man, fingers, time, because it's up to them. They can govern it and no one else can get a record in it because it's their own thing. If you go and use someone else's fingers, whatever you want to call them, it's a new record because it's someone else's equipment, So I think there's always a place for records, but I think maybe it's been overdone a little bit, oversold a little bit.
So this is.
I like the squats and the barrels and the world's strongest man. I think that's got good for times and stuff. But it's a new record every time I do a world's strongest man. We start again, different weights, different stuff.
Yeah. So what do you think, Kale? If we were to have a tournament again, do you feel like it would need to bring in independent adjudicators, and how independent would they be? Would it actually solve anything, really, is what I'm getting at?
I don't think it would. It's just, whoever controls the media and the narrative kind of controls how it's done. And that's always how it's going to be, and that's fine. I think you try to make things too official, you get away from what strongman is. I think it's good with people like is this record legit or not kind of goes in the face of strongman, because that's always been the thing with strongman is like, is it even real? Like people think like the kegs are empty, like it's just, it kind of comes from the circus. You need to keep a little bit more of that circus attitude in the sport. The more you start going to making it so official, you're getting towards that Olympic attitude. And I don't think that, like with weightlifting and making everything like everyone has to be quiet before you lift. I think you try to make it a show. You try to make it like a rock festival. The more you can do that, then the more you can make it like golf and tennis is kind of where strongman is. Whether that makes it more legitimate or not, I don't think it matters. I think that makes the sport better. If they weighed plates and stuff, it would be good, but I think that's just going to keep going. Like then you have to do it more and more and more, right? Like there's stuff we can call out, like when you get a fourth attempt on a log and someone says, there strongman, there is no rules, and I agree with that. When Colin said that, he went, it was a fourth attempt, he went, no, it's strongman, there are no rules. I think that's kind of good. Like it's bad on one hand, but it's also kind of good. You got to have it balanced. You can't go too much to like calibrating every scale and every rock, and once someone drops it down, did a little chip of this Atlas stone come off and make it a little lighter for the next guy. Like I remember I did a nationals, and this guy he swore that like my car deadlift didn't have any plates on it, and that like a water bottle, like an empty water bottle, like fell under the handle while I was doing it. He said it was helping me put it up and down. Like oh yeah, I'm like that's what happened. That's why I did 3 times as many reps. Like
Yeah,
it was the empty water bottle.
the first
But
Siberian
I like
parachute,
that.
the first Siberian parachute I was at, they had the shield carry. Every time someone dropped it, it literally fell into like 10 pieces, and they were using sellotape to put it all back together like that, or
Yeah.
masking tape. But of course, bits were crumbling off all the way through, and the 10th guy, I'm sure, was lifting about 60% of what the first guy was actually carrying. But that is the
Just
fun
how it goes.
for you,
We,
Ollie.
we had it. We had it in Britain's Strongest Man 2006 when I won it. The deadlift, the side handle deadlift, 2 cars that appeared to be the same, and I wasn't into testing equipment. I wanted to feel the weight when I do it. So it was 2 people at a time for reps, and a few guys tested. I was more arrogant. Like I don't need to test it. I'm gonna do more than anybody. Maybe Mark Felix will get near me. And fast towards the event, and I came maybe 4th or 5th, getting beaten by people that never beat me at deadlift. And I was a bit confused by it, but I understand I'm human, so maybe I was not so good. And it turns out that every single person that tested had the left car afterwards, went for the left car. People that didn't test ended up with whatever car they got given, which is the right car. And people will debate this, but judging by how it went, there was a good 20 kilo difference in them cars.
Yeah. It happens. That it shouldn't happen, but it makes the fun stories.
I don't mind if I get the light car.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Looking back at it, Ollie, having competed at World's Strongest Man and IFSA, which, as we've pointed out, the big difference is basically one is geared up for entertainment and one was trying to gear towards more professionalism, standardization. As an athlete, which was better to compete in?
Well, in IFSA, I had to compete in the competitions they gave me because it was part of my contract. So it became more of my day job. I was traveling to Eastern European countries and just doing events all the time. Too many events, not able to peak out at any point really. Maybe the World Championships, the World Strongest Man format, and the Super Series was a lot more fun. And if I could go back, I would stay in World Strongest Man, and I'd come second to Morris that first year I went to it. And I'll say that, and I'd argue that to the moon. I would, and I'd be known for coming second to World Strongest Man now. Fortunately, maybe, but still. And so yeah, back to what you said. The events, part of the fun was lost, part of the magic was lost with all the stainless steel and the IFSA, and it was the same 10, 12 guys at every competition doing the same 10, 12 events. That gets a little bit repetitive. Like strongman's about something wild, something you haven't seen before. Wow, he's lifting that, he's throwing a horse, he's doing, it's whatever it might be. That's what makes it exciting. It's not powerlifting.
Yeah, and if they do want to just keep it going, if they're not, they want to keep the gravy train going, I think a good way to do that with records, making more records, is by including more of the weight classes, more of the division, the women. We just saw it at Giants Live when we saw, the female world record deadlift. That got a lot of excitement. It's not on the Eddie 500 kilos, but I don't even think people really knew that was going to happen. And there's excitement, and I think the next one, there'll be even more excitement. And just doing that is a way to kind of, you make more records to get people excited about records. Is a way that they could and should do it. There's all kinds of, that same weekend I saw was it like a 90 kilo world records, like some insane weight was it, like 840 pounds or something, at 90. And that was in a car park versus, the women's deadlift record was done at Giants Live in a stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, you do see that and you look like that guy, just to get that opportunity to do that in a stadium when the effort's pretty much the same. So to see it rewarded, I think would be a smart move by Giants or Rogue or whoever wants to run these. Just, there's tons of athletes out competing. They might not all be heavyweight men. But those records are getting a little more unattainable to do every other weekend, where you could find some lifter that's some way or size and shape to do something anytime you want, pretty much.
Both you guys, as competitors of the sport, obviously Ollie at the very highest, but Kel, you've had your fair share of competitiveness at high level too. Always was the big debate between Eddie and Thor. Well, Thor did it at home. It's much easier like that, whereas Eddie has to do it in competition. But there's a flip side that often it's much more motivation when you have a crowd there, adrenaline of the people and all that type of thing. So how did you guys find the differences training or competing, in a car park, or even perhaps going for big lifts, at your gym, as opposed to in competition? Which was easier for you?
Competitions in my own gym, local competitions, were the easiest because I was just very comfortable with my own equipment, which is another part of the debate, isn't it? Using my own equipment. I was when I was at my best, I win world's strongest man on my equipment, 100%. You just know the dynamics of it and the movements of it. These stadium shows, I think they lend well to world records because they're quite long, drawn out competitions, and you're in a nice, warm, dry atmosphere. I think it works well. But I think Eddie and Thor's records, they are both done surrounded by people that would really like them to get a record. For whatever that means. Everyone present officially at these places was quite keen for them to get the record in both situations. Whether that compromises it or not, that's up to you to sort of decide what you think about that. But strongman world records, it's a sport, it's a made up sport, and we make it up, don't we? Strongman isn't a set format. We add to it. You can make up a brand new event for it, and it can be in World's Strongest Man right now. So it's a made up sport, and it constantly evolves, and so the world records will never have a full impactful sort of number to them, like a Usain Bolt running 100 meters in a certain time. And even then, if the wind's too hard behind him, he doesn't get a record. Whilst I can go out with my own log and put up a record and claim it as a record, and a lot of people will say, "Yeah, great lift." Even like these logs now, they use these equipment now. They use these logs that are very grippy on your chest as you roll up your chest. They can throw them down after they finish a lot of the time now. But a lot of things are changing. They use these T-shirts that have grippy material on them to pull up. So as the sport's grown, it's also the ability and the knowledge of how to get better at it has grown, and hence why records will always be broken.
And for you, Kel?
Yeah, I think I pulled my heaviest deadlift ever in a competition, I think by like by like a good amount, like by like 15 kilos, maybe 18, something like that. So I found it helpful, and that was a car park competition. So like in a stadium, if you're doing that, like I think it would hype me up better. But there's some lifters that are a lot worse. Like they'll be better in the gym. It really depends on the athlete. And I think not having to travel to do the record is a big thing. Not having to get on a plane. Like I think, like I was with Robert Oberst a lot when he went to the log championship, and you get people they don't tell the backstory. Like he's in California, he's got to go all the way to England. He has to get on different planes than a bus, than a this, versus, if all he wakes up and goes there, like that's a huge advantage. There's some like, you get in like 3 a.m. and you got to lift at, noon, basically. Like that. I think the travel is a bigger disadvantage to that than, the venue. And the thing that it's unfair to Thor when people bring up that world record is he didn't choose to have it in his own gym. I don't know why that gets lost there. Like it was a strange time. There was a show planned to do it with, with a big crowd and all of that.
Yeah.
And, a lot of things got messed up in that time. And, that's just how it was. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Were they supposed to?
Thor's father wasn't the one who said the plates weigh that. Magnus, who was Giants Live and World's Strongest
There's a lot of
had the decision. So
there's a lot of half truths told on stuff. I think it probably bothers Thor all the time that he didn't get to do it like in front of, his fellow competitors and stuff. But like, they had, like some guy from Iceland who I've never seen do another strongman show commentating it, because he was the only person that could get there that was qualified. That's just how that time frame was. And as a strongman fan, would you rather have there been nothing that entire time? Like, I think it was a big thing for the sport that there was no sports anywhere, and you could see a couple of world records happen.
Wasn't it the case anyway, even at Giants Live? I don't want to say this for sure because I can't remember because so many stories came out, but didn't Eddie bring his own platform? He brought something from his home gym there as part
of it. I've heard it was his own bar, his own platform.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The whole deal.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, but
all swings and rounds.
That could be how true or not that is. Could be the same way. Like, I interviewed Jerry Pritchett, and he said that with all the because everyone celebrated and there's still 2 lifters to go. So he's like, I was all peaked and ready, and then there was like everyone acted like someone just won.
Had a big delay for Jerry to go out and then have to lift. Yeah,
and then tore his hamstring or whatever. And that's just kind of how it goes. Like, the situations do matter, and the biggest thing with it is, like we're saying, like no matter what made the 500 special, it was the moment. It all just came together, the right moment, right time, right lifter, right promoter. For that moment, it was all the right stuff. And that's what's the magical stuff in sports. These are once in a lifetime moments. You can't force them to happen. I worked for the publication that live streamed the event, and I had to do the write-up. And I remember I was submitting like, can someone deadlift 500 kilos? And like, for before, like a week or two before, I just put like, this is such bullshit. This is never going to happen. Like, I had it all written up. And then the night before, I was sitting there and I rewrote the whole thing, and I was like, he can do it. Like, I was like, this is actually going to happen, and that's just how it was. Like, it didn't seem like it was possible until like you just got this feeling in the air around it as a fan, as someone who finds a sport that like something that shouldn't happen is going to happen. And it did. And, it was just one of those moments. So you can't recreate them. You gotta let sport moments happen. You got to cultivate them, but once in a lifetime for a reason.
It seems like in this whole conversation, the point that we've got to is that standardizing the sport is detrimental for strongman. We don't want it to go in that direction. But without that, we can't really expect legitimate records. And therefore, we should just view records more as entertainment and something to fans to enjoy and perhaps entice new fans to the sport. But overall, not to take them too seriously beyond saying, okay, that person lifted that amount in that place at that time, right? Is that pretty much where we are with it?
Yeah, I'm with that. It's strongman. It's got to be fun. It's got to be fun. It's nothing should be taken too seriously. Serious enough that we respect the feats of strength, but beyond that, we shouldn't push too hard for it to be so official, so proper. You know, we don't want it to be an Olympic sport with a testing regime and rules and governing bodies. You'll lose the spirit of the sport, which is something that's quite beautiful at times when it's done properly. A funny little side note, I was thinking as you two were speaking there, one thing that would make a world record in my eyes from when I was competing with the IFSO, we spoke about, if you got a world record and Jamie Reeves is the referee, you got a fucking world record. That guy had no interest in helping anybody get a record. If you take 10 seconds too long, if Jamie Reeves is referee for Eddie Hall's deadlift, and then he took too long to walk out, Jamie would say, nah, took too fucking long, you missed your turn. Do you know what I mean? And I love Jamie, but he wasn't keeping free records out. So, you know, I guess that lends to the fact that having the right people can make it a much more comfortable experience.
But as an athlete, is that not better for you that you know where you're at and that you feel then when you do get given a lift, you feel like, yeah, that was legitimate. You haven't got that thing like, I'm not sure about that myself, and everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it depends on the financial, what's at stake financially. You know, I've been given a few lifts. I got given a log lift in the World Championships in Iceland. In the final, I opened on 180, and my bicep was playing up. I couldn't clean it very well, and Dougie gave me a very generous early lockout call that he regretted, and we all joked about it. And so that wasn't a lift, but I wasn't gonna wipe off the board.
Yeah, go to the referee's orders. Just why we've got you here, Ollie, because I think we've cleared up or not cleared up records as much as we can. I know one thing people often, or athletes often say, strongman athletes that are weighing in, 140, 50 kilograms, the feeling of walking around like that makes them feel good, makes them feel kind of, let's say, on top of the world. And after walking away from the sport and losing weight, that's one of the big things they miss. Was that the case for you? And also for you, it's unique in the fact, though, that you went from people having that perception of you and you feeling like that into the UFC, where, of course, is known as the ultimate level of fighting. So you've gone from one very kind of manly sport to another. So what were the different feelings for you from one sport to the other?
Yeah, I mean, as far as this sort of like the walking around being huge and how you feel with it, it feels great at the time in that moment. It doesn't feel great when you look back on it, because it didn't look as good as I thought it looked physically. But at the time, you think you look shit hot, you put a vest on, and you think you look great. You think you have that perception when you're younger that when you get massive, like everyone likes you, all the girls like you. It's not how it is. I love losing weight after strongman. I loved it because when I was 145 kilos, I could do a few things really well, and I could do a load of things really badly. Whilst I knew I had abilities where at maybe 115, 110, I could still do the things quite well, but I had a much more broader span of abilities. And that's part of the reason why I started fighting as well, to show that I had more to my arsenal than just being strong. Because some of these strongmen are just strong, They're just strong guys. And some of them are real athletes. And not everyone's both. No, that's just how it is. And you can sort of pick them out. I can pick them out. I can spot an athlete amongst a strongman easily, comfortably, through experience. But what I missed a lot, I missed the feeling in that 2 hours in the gym every day, the feeling when you load the bar up and you got mirrors in the gym, and through every mirror is a different set of eyes, and the gym stops. The whole gym stopped. The whole gym is just through different mirrors and through different angles. The whole gym is looking at like, what the fuck is he about to do? And something about that it just makes you feel that moment is really important, and the lift's really important. And I miss that because I haven't done an important lift since World's Strongest Man 2008. Not one lift I've done has ever inspired me or felt good since. I've never hit that feeling again. I've knocked people out, That's felt great. But just the feeling of pulling a couple of reps with 400 kilos in the gym that's never seen someone pull more than 300 kilos, and what that does to people, it's euphoric.
And then you lose the weight, or you lose, how much weight did you lose from World's Strongest Man to where you're at now?
Where I'm at now is maybe 107, 108 kilos, and I was 146 at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to go. I should have gone heavier. If I'd gone heavier, I probably would have been doing a lot of these numbers. These boys doing these big lifts. We're talking about world records now, but I wasn't a big eater on that level, and I wasn't willing to compromise my my physical abilities and health in other ways that others have. And that's not a criticism, you know. Eddie, I'm pretty sure Eddie nearly killed himself doing what he did.
Yeah.
And I was willing to die for the result, but not because of health.
But so you went from that feeling in the gym, like you say, people watching that size, to losing the weight, but you didn't just stop. You then went to UFC, which everybody knows as like toughest guys in the world, the best fighters. So what was the feeling like doing that as opposed to strongman?
For me, the fighting gave me a real feeling of validation because I wasn't just a strong guy now. Because I knew I was something, not more, but something different to that. And people just got to know me as being strong. I didn't realize that I had quite a big athletic background. So it was kind of validation for me. It's very satisfying. I don't take pleasure from hurting people. I'm not one of them fighters. I do this to compete. I do this to be better than one man. You know, strength sports and fighting sports to me are the two purest, oldest forms of competition between man, woman, man, whatever, human, mankind, whatever. And you know, I've done reasonably well at both, and I can do reasonably well at quite a lot of other things as well. But I didn't have the opportunity to. So doing well in fighting, it also gave me a relief because I missed strongman. I missed competing strongman. I missed being amongst it. I missed having the ambition to be world's strongest man. So it filled that void. If it hadn't filled that void, it would have been a very tough route for me to come out of it and just stop.
Same for you, Kel, because obviously you competed for a long time and then you've become a family man and it's not your priority anymore. Has it been difficult for you to have to drop some strength and size or not?
Well, unfortunately, I haven't dropped any size. I was listening to what Oli says he weighs, and I know he's much taller than me, and I'm not far behind him in that thing. And it's making me think like, yeah, you really do have to do something about this. But yeah, it's really tough. You like especially staying in the sport, staying coaching the sport. I get the question even a few days ago. Like I told one of my clients I had a dream that I had a dream I competed in a strongman competition. It was vivid and it was weird and it was like oddball stuff. And he's like, "Oh, you itching to get back?" I'm like, "No, it didn't make me want to, but it's still there." It took like, I'm getting like Facebook memories. I competed in China like 10 years ago. It's like you're saying you won Britain's Strongest Man. It's now 20 years ago. It goes from like feeling like this was, oh, it's just a year ago, it's just 2 years ago, to like that was a decade. Like that was a decade since like the last time I did like a big thing. And it's two. It's like there's people that are like younger than that competing now, than how long ago it was. There will be like it's strange. So like I tried to dabble a little bit, and what I realized is I knew I was compromising my health if I was going to keep doing it. I don't have the biggest frame, like it's just how it is, and it was taking more than it was giving at some point, and that's when I knew I had to step away for my other life goals. But it was hard on a personal level, and it still is to some extent. But I also don't want to do it, and people realize that because you get to a point where, to me, in anything in life, if you get to a point where you feel like I can't recreate what I did before, it's not fun anymore. I tried to just do some local shows just for fun, like just little stuff, and I tore my bicep because I'm like, oh, I think I could win the whole thing. So I'm just like, and I wasn't prepared to. So yeah, it's hard from a mindset thing, but I feel like this last like year or two, I've finally gotten to the point where it's like, I still can talk about the sport, but it seems like a different lifetime, and I'm fine with that. But it is a hard thing to go away from feeling like when you say you have that moment in the gym, and it's like it just blows people's minds when they see it, you know, at whatever level that is intoxicating. But I also realized what that state of mind I had that made me need that isn't exactly healthy to, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
for
I
a
understand what
long-term
you're saying, man.
life. Like,
Yeah, I get you.
so
I get you.
I kind of look at it like I miss that, but then I also kind of look at it like it's silly at the same time, you know, not
Kind
to
of,
take away your
yeah.
moment or anything, but like,
No, I
you know, in the
understand.
great in the grand scheme of things, you know, it's like I know from my background I needed that outside validation so much and just to go. But yeah, it's tough from, you know, you feeling like you can feel like you're on top of the world, like you can just everything in your life, you had this everything's going on, you can just head to the gym, you can be there, you know, we'd be there 2 3 4 hours and you leave. You're like, what else matters? I crushed squats today. Nothing else
Mhm.
matters. And I don't have anything that gives me that same like just lets it all go anymore from all the other crap in life, which is that's the hardest part about it.
Yeah,
But
I
let's
understand. I understand. Also, I was probably a very selfish guy when I was doing things really well, you
Yes.
know. So I've lessened in certain aspects and probably grown a lot more in a lot more aspects.
let's finish on for both of you. What was looking back then like a highlight of your careers in terms of competing? If you could pick out one of, or you know, one of a few that particularly stands out for you guys.
Hmm. Carol, you first.
uh for me it was just getting some recognition as a lightweight competitor when people said like it's just no one's ever gonna care. No one's ever gonna care. Like if you're not 300 pounds, no one cares. Um, it was kind of, but that was kind of like a double-edged sword though, because like people then, because like I felt like people connected because they could relate, thinking they could do it, you know. But it's like, but yeah, I just had a moment like there was like one contest. There's a guy like I went up to like a state above us in Washington. I did a contest and we were like tied going into points. It was a keg run. He had got like second at our nationals the year before, so he's a top guy, you know. And I was just breaking in, and like it was just a good barometer. And we went a keg run. It was me against him. Whoever wins wins. You know, you had to run like 4 kegs back and forth, and I just absolutely destroyed that event. And that feeling in that moment where it's like it's all on you and you pull it off. Those are the best moments. But like all I ever remember is like hanging out with people and laughing. Like those are the real moments you remember is like eating with friends, laughing, and just, you know, it just kind of everything felt so simple.
Yeah, good answer. Good answer. I suppose for me, like you said there, the social aspects, the four-man team competitions in Ukraine were spectacular. You also had such fun barbecues, drinking vodkas. I've got some amazing stories. But as far as in sporting terms, the peak moment for me, it's not at World's Strongest Man. It's not winning Britain's Strongest Man. It's not lifting 400 kilos or 410. My favorite moment was 2004. I qualified for the final for the first time at Britain's Strongest Man. I'd only been training weights, lifted weights for maybe less than 2 years. I got to the final and no one really spoke to me. No one really cared for what I was doing. No one really knew me or liked me, which was fine. And I was leading the final in British Strongest Man for 90%. And I never lifted a stone before properly, so I didn't know what to do. I didn't do very well, but I finished the competition third. And after finishing third, it was just this gradual realization, the feeling of the feeling of respect from your peers that you suddenly feel in a nice way, in a positive way. I walked away. I walked away from that competition, and people were talking to me that really cared about what I was doing, and I felt like I felt like finally in life I'm doing something that people care about. and I've got that respect that I've probably been searching for. That to me was a much bigger moment in my memory than winning this or lifting this. It was how it made me feel. And I think that's what most of us do at the time. Kale, does that make sense to you? How it made you feel at the time.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing with that contest. I feel like that was the one moment where you're like here and it's like you belong, and then you feel like you're at this level. You're like, whatever that moment was, it's all relative depending on, you know, what level you competed at. But you all like strive to get, like, I think if I work hard enough, I can get here. You know, and I feel like that first moment, you know, talking to, you know, Obi, I don't think any contest to him means as much as when he won his pro card when I was with him and we're taping up his ribs because he had a rib slip out and we were getting ready to do a car deadlift, like, you know, and he went on, you know, this is just like at some little fitness expo. It was a nothing, but it's like all that hard work where you almost get there, you fail, you almost get there, and then you're like, oh, I'm here. Like whatever you feel here is.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like that's what I remember, and it seems like kind of the same.
Yeah, it's interesting for both of you. It's not your kind of peak achievement. It was just a moment when you had validation both from others and you fulfilled for yourselves what you knew you were capable of.
A feeling. I remember a feeling rather than a moment. A feeling is what sticks with you. How you felt in that moment.
Okay, guys. Yeah, it was a great insight. Thank you into both your careers and records in strongman, which obviously is a topic that will always roll on but never really get sorted, I think. But maybe that's part of the fun of it all. So yeah, thanks you both for joining us. Ollie, I'm sure we'll have you back again. Kale, you're
a pleasure
here. And yeah, we'll catch you next time, guys. Just drop a comment below, let us know what you thought, your opinions on the conversation we've had today. We'll be very interested to read them. Thanks again, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kale.